guys, I'm Bella and I'm the face behind this account. As you guys wanted, I'm gonna be making an IGTV about how it is traveling with a pet in an airplane, and because it was almost like a 50-50, I'm actually gonna be making a video both in English and in Swedish just to make it as easy for everyone. So as you may know, I am from Stockholm, Sweden, and me and Nemo, we live in Stockholm, but during university semesters I study in Sarajevo, Bosnia, so we travel quite a bit back and forth. And today I made up some points on my iPad and I'm going to be talking about how it is to travel with your pet. So when Nemo first came to me, we lived in Poland, so after just being with me for a day, we traveled from Stockholm to Poland, and we had a layover for about 3 hours. And that was really nice that he was already kind of trained to be in his bag, so he was very comfortable, and also now he's behind me here in his little travel bag and he's very comfortable in it. So when you travel with your pet in an airplane, there are a few steps that you need to take and a few things that you have to think about. So the first, number one, you need to have a pet passport. And the pet passport looks like this in Europe. I'm pretty sure it looks the same almost everywhere. I just have it in this little case to protect it. And in the passport, you have all information about your dog. You have the chip number, you have all the information about their vaccinations and everything like that. So in Europe, the biggest rule is that you have to have had your pet vaccinated against rabies, and your dog cannot travel after having the vaccine because it has to wait for 21 days before it's allowed to travel out from the country where the vaccine was took. And it has to be 21 exact days. It's very important, and it's very important with the rabies vaccine because there have been instances where the vaccination is not up to date, and unfortunately pets have had to be put down. In some countries, like for instance next week we are going to Montenegro, you also need to do a titration test, and that needs to show that the pet has enough antibodies for the rabies vaccine. And that's, I don't know the exact countries, but I know Montenegro and Serbia because they have like active rabies in the country, whereas for instance Bosnia, they have controlled rabies, so that's the difference. And I also know that that titration test cannot be taken immediately. You have to wait like 120 something days before you're able to take that vaccination. I meant to say before you can take that test. So I also know that for some countries, like for instance for Norway and for the UK, when coming from Sweden, I need to give my dog a little tablet for echinococcus, which is a parasite, and that has to be taken at the vet's office, and it has to be documented also in your passport. I didn't know it, but apparently they have it here, but it's not like something you have to, but the vet also gave Nemo the pill here last year, so it's valid for like 1 year. So point number two, when you fly in your dog in the cabin of the airplane, you have to have a bag that fits the dimensions that is provided by the airline. Usually it's enough, you can just search like pet in cabin XYZ airline and it will come up which dimensions you should have. I don't know how I'm gonna lift this bag because he is in it, but I'm gonna show you like this. So this is our bag, and here he is. I read somewhere that it's really important that the bag has air from 3 sides. So we have a Sherpa bag, you can just research them, and they have like mesh on 3 sides because of air ventilation. It's also really important that the bag and the dog should not weigh more than 8 kilos together. So it's not okay if the dog is 8 kilos, the bag is 500 grams, that's a no-go, then you have to check your dog in. So it has to be 8 kilos maximum together. And I also know another thing, that for going to the USA from Europe, they are very strict on dimensions on the carriers, and they're very strict on what type of carrier it should be, and this Sherpa bag is approved to go to the USA. That's why I got it, because I was thinking maybe I want to go to the US one day in the next years with Nemo, so I thought, why not get this bag? What's really important also to know about the bag is your pet has to be really comfortable in the bag, because you're not allowed to take your pet out until after the customs at the arrival country, which means that for me, when I fly, I have to actually have a layover, and I'm not allowed to take him out, so Nemo can spend up to 7 hours in his bag, which means he has to be super comfortable in it. As you saw, he is extremely comfortable in it, and that's taken a lot of training and a lot of calm time in his bag. I also always have his bag out so he can go in whenever he wants and feel comfortable in his little hideout. So point number 4 is basically that you should train your dog to be in the carrier, and you should take them in the carrier everywhere and use the same one that you're going to use for when you're flying in an airplane. So for me, I put him in it in the car, I put him in it when we go on a bus, I bring it when we go on a train. I bring his carrier everywhere we go, because then he's just going to be so much more comfortable in it. So, point number 5 is that when you arrive to the new country of arrival, you have to go through the red zone, something to declare. That's really important, and usually there they just check the chip of the dog and they look through the passport to see that they have all the necessary vaccinations. In Bosnia, they're not so strict, so they basically never check, but I know in Sweden and Nordic countries and in Austria, they are very strict about it. So, number 6. So how are you going to go about booking your flight ticket? So, I always look up what flight I want to take, and then I call up the airline and tell them which flight I want to go on and ask if there is a place for a pet. I do that because mostly they're just allowed 2 pets in cabin per flight, and I don't want to book a ticket and then call and then they're not having room and I just spent a shit ton of money on an airplane ticket. So I always call and check first. They usually immediately tell me that there is room, and I hang up the phone, book my ticket, call them back and say that I want to book a pet in cabin, and usually for that you get a confirmation right away. It has happened to me that I was thinking about not calling and I ended up calling, and they told me that at that flight there wasn't actually any more room, so it's always good to double call. Number 7 is that what's going to happen when you get to the airport. So when you get to the airport, most of the time they want to weigh your dog with a carrier. They usually look at your passport when you check in. With some airlines, you have to pay for the dog at the airport, so that can take a bit of more time. But for most of them, you pay when you call on the phone. When you go through the security with a tiny dog like Nemo, I take him out of the carrier and I go with him through the x-ray machine, not the x-ray machine, what's it called? The metal detector? Yeah, the metal detector, and we go together, me carrying him. When I was in Austria, they actually took me to a separate room with him and they made him go through the machine, the little metal detector, by himself, just to double check. And a really important thing is that in most airlines you have to have a clean dog, a non-smelling dog, a freshly groomed dog to have it in the airplane, just for everyone's comfortability. And it's also important to remember to walk your dog and limit their food and water intake that day, because as I said, sometimes you have a quite long flight or layovers where you cannot take your dog out, and we cannot take them out of the airport if you don't have enough time, so it's good that they don't feel the need to go. I know that in the USA that there are places in bigger airports where you can take your dog to like a dedicated pet area, but in the European countries that I have been to with Nemo, which is I think 6, there has not been the possibility to do so, so I think that it's better just to make sure that your dog is freshly walked. A really good tip is what I did for the first time he flew with me when he was really small, is I brought like puppy pads with me, and I went to the disabled people's bathroom because they're bigger, and I put like 3 or 4 puppy pads on the ground, and I was with him for maybe 10 minutes in there, and he just peed and did his business on the puppy pads, and you can just throw them away and they don't have to like really hold it for a long time when they're so small. And I always bring like urine off spray in case there is an accident in the airport. I want to be responsible as an owner to clean it up and to spray it and to like sanitize that ish and make sure that it's all good. So number 8, during your flight you're not allowed to take your dog out. So what should you do? With the Sherpa bag, what I really love is that you can open the top of it so I can look at him, or I can open and he can stick his little head out. But you should just cuddle your dog, try to be calm, sit with them, talk with them, and most of the time for Nemo, he's so comfortable that he usually just sleeps, and he doesn't really want water or food when we fly, but I mean that's understandable. Usually I don't want that either. For number 9, I just again want to emphasize it's really important to have the right paperwork. I know that in European countries and especially Nordic countries, they are very strict, so just make sure, go to like the local site for veterinary medicine or whatever and just double check. But most importantly is the rabies vaccination and that it's up to date. I usually feel very stressed when we fly, but I'm getting more and more calm because I know now how it works, and I think it's not really a stressful thing if you do it over and over. The first time I had a panic attack before and I cried with my mom, but it's all fine and it usually goes fine. The people, they are very fine. They usually just think it's kind of fun that you fly with your dog. For number 11, it's really important when you arrive that you are nice to the people that check the chip, and when you go through the red area that you are always like polite and nice to them, because they will make it as smooth as possible for you to go through as fast as possible. I know that for going to Sweden, you can actually go to a website and you can put in all the information about the dog, the flight, and you don't have to go through the red area because the dog is already registered that it's gonna come. But that you can only like do that, or you should only do that if you have like a connecting flight and you don't have enough time. So I know that checking your dog in is very different, and unfortunately I cannot talk about how that goes, but for flying them in the cabin, I know all there is to know. So are there any questions? You can just feel free to send me a DM or comment on this. I think you can do that, and I will try to answer as best as I can. I got one question about like what is my biggest tip, and actually my biggest tip is just to like stay calm and make sure you have all the paperwork in a little available pack. I have this folder where it just says like Nemo and my name, and in here I have everything that you could possibly need. And I always have this in my hand luggage in my bag because it's just easy to pull out. And I would say to bring your dog water, even though they might not want it. It could be kind of nice for them to have some water. But that's basically it. Everyone should fly with their dog. It's really not that big of a deal. And I hope I will see you guys flying with your dogs very soon. If you have questions, please let me know. That's it for now. Bye.